Hello world! Patricia O'Connor and Frida Reba Dorsey here today on the bonsai balcony. It is a beautiful, beautiful Sunday, Key airliner. And it's warm. It is quite warm, and it's also, for some of us, it might have been kind of a lazy day so far. Yeah, we were kind of having a lazy day. This is Frida Reba Dorsey, and I'm Patricia O'Connor, and we are, that's baconated, and we are the Bonsai Balcony, and today we're going to do a show about spring, even though it's been spring here for a minute. I am doubly blessed in that I have this balcony, which is my space to create, and I decided that rather than pile more stuff out here, as the storage space, that I would make this my creative space. At first, what I did was I had that little antique daybed sitting right here, and the idea was to have a big basket of something that would grow tall on either side of that daybed, and some wisterias and some planters. That's what those pedestals were for, there and there. And I was gonna have, and I still have, all of that sky every night. And I watch the stars, and I watch all the air traffic go by, which I find interesting. Sometimes sometimes I have to try to scream over the low fly. On cloudy days, they come in under the clouds, which makes them louder than on days like today. Anyway, it is a stellar, beautiful day, and it's been here in the Bay Area. It starts being spring around New Year. I mean, just, except for some things. And about this, it's funny how we did a show yesterday where we did a reveal on this Trident maple. We were going to see how we looked in the root department, and I'm always talking cause and effect. And while I was shooting this video, my brain works differently. I'm not necessarily the best detective. I'm trying to think in a way of not doing something to cause me an edit issue later. So I'm just basically kind of going through my show and trying not to say anything that I have to edit out or go down some path that's gonna lead nowhere. So that's kind of how I think. And sometimes later I think about it out of the blue and go, oh duh. So this morning when I woke up, this was my oh duh. And I'm explaining it this way because it sort of amazes me the way the brain works. When I woke up this morning, I wasn't thinking bonsai, I wasn't thinking Trident maple, I wasn't thinking, cool, we got roots. The first thing just out of the blue, before I thought coffee, before I thought as Frida had her yet, before I thought any of that, I thought, it's not been hot enough for the Trident maple to bud out or produce roots. Duh. And it just kind of amazes me that without having to think about it, that just popped into my head when I woke up this morning fresh, after having just spent about 15, 20 minutes doing a reveal, and then we repacked our roots in there, and then we rewrapped them, and now we're all back in there. And as per order, just about that time, the temperatures had gone up enough to where the Trident maple is now starting to bud out. And yesterday when we looked, we did see a lot of fine roots. And I would bet now, with like today's mentioned, it's quite warm. And with that, I would expect to see that's just going to accelerate. So that's kind of what finished that little thought. And as per that, I also went through and finished doing some of the moss there. We had one of our viewers who's said something, gave us the tip about mixing moss with sphagnum moss and then lacing that through. Yes, absolutely. I actually did a show like that a couple of years ago and probably repeated it, I think, last summer. What even works better for me is when I take a bean grinder, a coffee grinder, and put moss and sphagnum moss in a coffee grinder, and then mulch the heck out of that and lay it down. And that requires a day that is less windy than what we had when I put that stuff down. putting that stuff down in lump form was good enough to keep it there on when the winds were yesterday. They were 10 miles an hour and steady. So if I'd have laid down some, if I'd have mulched that up finer and laid down some sphagnum or peat moss with that, it just would have been swirling around here on the floor of the balcony. But that is absolutely, and that was a good time to point that out, and I probably could have pointed that out yesterday. What they pointed out was, had I taken that moss 50-50, our moss, and mixed that with sphagnum moss, and then I could have reapplied that, and then we keep that moist for a few days and let it take root. Like I said, yesterday was so windy it would have been gone. It would have been blowing away as I was spraying it. But that is a great way, and I've even heard of people taking food grade green dye and applying to that, so that from day one it's got a really nice top dressing look to it. So yeah, that was our little tip there. We kind of went through here today and watered. When I have the weekend off, that gives me a good time to sit back and water. Whereas a lot of times I will look at the trees, and I still kind of do this. I'll look and go, it's 85% dry. I'm going to be gone for 8 hours. It's going to be, and then I'll think of the heat, both what I'm being told and what I actually believe it's going to be, because I'm responsible at the end of the day, even if I'm lied to. And so sometimes I'll water, and sometimes I'll water when it says I'm not quite ready, but I'm like, you would have been in 2 hours from now, and I won't be here, so drink up. But on my days off, I get a chance to make sure that everybody can go a little bit drier, a little bit longer, and anybody who's been getting a little bit too much water, we just banged the camera, and anybody who has been maybe getting a little yellow, this is our chance. This is our chance to green up a little. And we're making good use of that. But as I was saying earlier, look at all of those candles. All of the kids here are saying that it's candle time. Look at all of those pine candles. Those are all Japanese black pines. And so they're all firmly believing it's spring. The dawn redwood, this is what that looks like in spring. The top I chopped off from right there a couple of days ago is in that pot, and I've been keeping it going. I've been spraying it and misting it, making sure it stays wet. So we'll see. I might get another little starter out of that. I've done that before. I usually accidentally let them dry out, and that's that. But this time for sure we're not going to. Also, I rotated around the California oak. Also, this is what the California oak looks like when it's got spring. I'll see if I can do this again. The last time I showed this to you guys, it didn't really come into focus the way I want to. Those salmony little shoots there are telling us that this guy is ready to go. We're taking off, and it's just covered in little salmony little. So the trees that were bringing up the rear, the things that waited the very longest, as stated before, was the Trident maple and the Codahan maples. We had a visitor last year sometime, Jonas at Bonsai Tonight, but Jonas Dupois at Bonsai Tonight came by a visit. I think I'd ordered some tools and he dropped them off, which is nice. And he always sticks his head up here and tells me, and it's just great. It's anytime I can get him to tell me what's up, he can save me a lot of trouble. He can teach me some really valuable lessons. And we were at the time talking about maples. And he goes, it's kind of like your Ponderosa. It doesn't get hot enough or cold enough here for the maples. And I don't think that means that I'm in danger of losing the Trident maples. The way I worry about losing the Ponderosa pines, because it doesn't get hot enough or cold enough here. But I do think that's evident in that it is mid-April, and we're just now seeing the Trident maple starting to leaf out, and the Kodaheim maples. We're just now starting to see most of them. That half of them leaf out. So this one's leafing out a lot, but this was a little ahead of the game. Most of the rest of them are only just a little, and it's not quite half. But so here we are, mid-April, and everybody without exception is starting to respond to spring. And here are all of our little quick look back at all of our little seedlings that we popped in the kitchen. And these are last year's seedlings. We did about 2 rounds last year, as I recall. The John Redwood is looking well. I see the tree I want it to be. Got things that we could wire down. I see me putting some wire to this tree here in a minute. These little bumps and stuff. If some of you guys down here want to get froggy and produce a branch, I would love that. Did you show that? Yeah, I've got little nodules sticking up here. I sure would like to see a branch come out of there. So that's a quick little catch up. I'm about to go through, I believe, and cut back a couple of branches on here, not too many. I'm not a big believer in thinning out my bald cypress trees of all of the undesirable branches. I'm not trying to cut these guys necessarily into a perfect formal upright shape right yet. What I'm really trying to do is stimulate enough growth to continue to fatten up these trunks and make all of these guys grow in and roll over all of these cuts. So what that ends up being is I'm not as picky about what grows where. I do cut out a few things, but not all of the stuff. Just because it's sticking straight up or sticking straight down or coming back at us, I can let it go longer until fall in some cases, or until I see too many. Like, do I want that to become some huge shape? Because the next time you look, it's going to be some huge shape with that many. This will be bigger than this the next time I look. Let's take. Also, this tree exchanges branches fairly quickly. You can change your mind, and you can do what I call cause and effect. You can start cutting it one way and then see how the tree responds, and then if you don't like the end result from that, you're a spring, at the most, a spring away from having another shot at it, as long as you don't rob all the energy in the tree. And that's why I'm doing this sparingly. Very encouraged about the growth that I'm seeing down low here, and here. I'm going to encourage those guys to come out and add to the show. I haven't been seeing a lot of growth from this side. You can see those were some of what we had last year. And there was a time when I was actually worried about not seeing quite enough growth on this side. I wondered if that was a dead vein or something. Also, my little things that I cut off before I stuck in there, they're kind of still hanging in there. I'm keeping them sprayed. You can see more on the cork bark oak. Okay, let's talk about spring on the cork bark oak. These are more of a lime green. The sprouts on this guy are more of a lime green, and they are also beautiful, and it is covered in those white tips to lime green. really nice to see. So with spring sprung mostly everywhere else already, and most of our trees started showing us some nice going into spring mode early on. Um, April 13th, Sunday, on a beautiful Sunday, we can say that, actually I can say that as of a couple of days ago, everything on this balcony was nicely responding to the season that is spring. And everything looks green, almost everything looks really happy. These guys, you can hang on to your candles. We're just gonna let y'all fatten up y'all's trunks and stuff. You guys, welcome to the world. And hello world, little pine trees. So when it came to sprouting those little pine trees, and when it comes to, what I was just saying a minute ago, what I was hearing about, it's doesn't get hot enough and doesn't get cold enough for the Trident maples, like it doesn't get hot enough and doesn't get cold enough necessarily for my ponderosa pines. That's a product of where I live. Also a product of where I lived. I see quite a few of my contemporaries, they have white pines, and they go out in the wild and there's white pines all over that could be collected everywhere. I'm so jealous of that, just to be able to go out and get white pines. I can't have white pines or red pines because whereas the Japanese black pines that I'm really fortunate do extremely well here. Now see, the thing that I was doing about gloating about my seed count earlier, and I'm watching again, some of my contemporaries are not having that much luck with their Japanese black pine, except that I didn't really mean for my glutton to come at their expense. At the end of the day, I know living in Alameda, California is the main ingredient that makes popping seeds and having them be these little guys and do a really nice count. And even 3-year-old seeds, I got a pretty good, like an 80% or something out of 3-year-old seeds. And that's more going to be a reflection on where I live. Where you live, something grows very, very well. And if you if you have success with that, then the things that y'all have seen me try, like heavily folding those little Japanese black pines right out of the gate, we were taking, in some instances, we were taking liberties with little trees that had they been other varieties of trees, they wouldn't have tolerated that. They wouldn't have tolerated off of me. It's not golden hands. I live in a place where it's one less thing. We can check the box that says they live in the perfect growing environment. And I'm experimenting. Pat kicks the table. I'm experimenting with what the perfect growing environment is. Those 2 little trees there are Japanese black pines. Everything else you see there is the ponderosa pine, like that. So I am experimenting outside the box. But when it comes time to whether or not you plant 100 seeds and see 90 seeds pop, or whether you see no seeds pop, a lot of times that's not even on you. That's where you live. My method for growing Japanese black pines is not God's gift to popping seeds. It's just adequate, and it avoids a couple of things that I think are important by not using the paper towel. For instance, I avoid ripping the little microscopic hairs that come off of that first root. Those are supposed to be spikes to try to hold the seed in place while it just injects all of that energy it has into roots that even just blow out into the ground. So you're missing part of that if you're propagating seeds, for instance, on a paper towel. But that doesn't have anything to do with how many of them pop per se. That's just aftercare after the fact. So right now in April, it's pretty early to be looking at candles, but I'm always looking at candles a little early here. and we're looking at candles now. I'm supposed to go through and cut these candles about 30 days. Yeah, about 30 in June. So that might not be right, but certainly not 30 days from now. They're going to be quite long by then. Anyway, this is our spring show, and this is why sometimes when you see somebody and they look like they're Buddha's gift to propagating seeds or doing this or doing that, a lot of times their neighborhood is kind of, everybody lives somewhere where something does real well, and that always affords you a little bit more opportunities. That always affords you just a little bit, you get a little bit more leeway when something is otherwise really happy in its environment. It finds it easy to store energy, and sometimes that stored energy is a second chance on a 90-degree day or a 30-degree night or a skipped watering. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I just thought it would be a nice time. I take spring for granted because it's been happening for quite some time, but this week of all days, this week was it's spring for my oaks plural, and my maples plural, so it seemed like a good follow-up. And oh, by the way, there are those, you could zoom in on those pine cones and you'll see that those things look like blocks of resinous wood that just happen to be pine cone shaped. Like and subscribe if you guys have not already. I appreciate you. Little Frida. They're baconated. Little Frida appreciates you. And thank you all so much for watching. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. Ooh, lights out. That was nicely timed.